Black Butler was always a little bit strange when it comes to anime. When I watched it, I remember it was really hard getting into the series with just watching the first couple episodes. And everyone I talked to always said that it gets way better from there. But having to slog through a boring beginning, and after rewatching this, it's not really a boring beginning anymore, and I frankly don't understand why I thought it was boring. I may have just watched the wrong season. My memory's a little jank about how I watched Black Butler when it first released. So because I can't really remember whether or not I liked it or not, I decided to come back and try it again, and I'm trying to prep my mind knowing that the majority of this anime is not canon with the manga, which already just grinds my gears. So after I review the entirety of the anime in this video, I am also going to jump over and read the entire manga in a separate video and contrast it with the anime. So subscribe if you want more Black Butler content in the future. I always thought Black Butler was on the same level as Vampire Knight and Ouran High School Host Club, which is why I already reviewed those two anime. This is kind of like the last of the trifecta of what I always saw in the background that I never actually got the chance to really dive into. Black Butler is written by Yana Taboso in 2006. And to present day, as of the release of this video, the manga is still being released. It's described as shonen, but given how many girls I've seen froth the mouth over Sebastian and Grell, I would argue otherwise. It was originally published in Square Enix's G Fantasy magazine. Yes, the same company that brought you Pretty Men in Dangerous Situations brings you another man in dangerous situations. Recently in 2023, Crunchyroll announced they are going to release a new season of Black Butler titled The Public School Arc, which I think is like the first arc in the manga. So I'm confused. Are they rebooting the anime? They plan to release this in 2024, so I need to catch up now. This comes after like an 8-year wait after the most recent OVA was made, the Book of Atlantic. And they've been releasing an OVA over the course of like several years. So Black Butler never really went away. It likes to take its time with things. Now, of course, there's a DS game, a musical, there's books. However, I'm only going to be covering the main animated series and the manga. I may play the DS game in a live stream. I'm debating on that. Now, here's where things get confusing. Because they didn't follow the manga with everything, they started like doing their own thing and then they realized they messed up and then started following the manga. So none of it's in chronological order. None of it. It released season 1, season 2, and then all the OVAs. That's not technically chronologically how it's supposed to occur. It's supposed to be the first half of season 1, and then the OVAs, Book of Circus, Book of Murder, and then Book of Atlantic, and then season 2, and just keep in mind, season 2 is not canon at all. It's not in the manga whatsoever. So it's still, regardless of how you consume it, it's still confusing. I am going to watch them as they released, meaning I'm going to experience what you guys experienced as they were releasing, and it's not gonna be in chronological order whatsoever in terms of like the canon of the story, but there isn't really much of a canon going on in the first place. Now, last thing, I should add a little trigger warning before jumping into this. I'm gonna try and censor as much as I possibly can. There's definitely some things I'm just going to skip over entirely and just say, hey, here's what happened. It's never graphic. It's never graphic, but there is blood. There are jokes about yourself and domestic MMA fighting, if you know what I mean. Again, it's never graphic, but it's alluded to, so I just want to give you a heads up. I'm gonna do my best to make sure it's not bad if you have a problem with those things and you're watching this video. Okay, cool. The biggest thing that's required for a pivotal anime in the 2000s is the vibes, and boy do they start off strong. Already we got edgy imagery and making deals with demons. Black Butler is especially interesting now as it was back then, largely because of the fact it's set in the Victorian era. Currently, with the rise of cheap clothing and fast fashion, and how most everything we buy has cut corners and is made as cheaply as possible, there's a nostalgia for a time that our generation never lived, the appeal of old money, and the feeling of quality goods that will last more than one season. The story focuses on CL, the little kid with the eye patch, and Sebastian, the demon butler that CL made a contract with for yet unknown reasons. At first, the show is more of a cutesy, fun, slice of life, idyllic life, something very palatable to appeal to a general audience with the promise of later ramping up the story for a deeper narrative.
There was a lot of meat to be cooked for dinner, and it was going to take a long time.
Oh, we're so sorry we didn't mean it!
The show is plagued with the voice actors doing barely passing English accents. In between the quirky antics of the staff, they sprinkle in some darker scenes alluding to the more visceral story that's going to unfold in the future, tempting the audience to keep watching and to stick through with it. Breaking down the appeal of the butler archetype, it's hard not to love someone like Sebastian, where it's a capable and dignified man, someone that can provide, that's competent, and most importantly, feels very safe to be around, thus making the butler archetype a very safe play for writers who want to appeal to a female audience. However, that criticism doesn't make much sense given that this was marketed as a shonen, but I argue the larger audience is female. Another good example of the capable butler archetype would be Alfred from Batman.
Just see you spilling the wine!
Pay him no mind. He merely acted as befits one of my servants.
You see, I am simply one hell of a butler.
CL looking at him like, bitch, don't blow my cover. I always felt like the butler archetype was an example of positive masculinity. You have someone that provides and is also not holding it over someone's head. Someone who is attractive in that they serve. It's a chivalrous position, you know? It's like, it's less John Wayne and more James Bond. I think this is the kind of masculinity that should make a return, and not the alpha male hyper testosterone ideal that has people in a chokehold nowadays. So subscribe if you want more well-dressed people in front of cameras. When it comes to Black Butler as compared to Vampire Knight, they allow themselves to lean heavily into the hellish, demonic aspects of the horror, that heartless, inhumane style of horror. This allows theoretically no boundaries that can't be explored with the story.
Special Darjeeling blend to offer from Fortnum and Mason today.
Grell?
Yes, my lady.
Wow, funny. That guy shares the same name as the sexy red-haired one. What a coincidence. So this red-haired woman is CL's aunt, so he still has family outside of his immediate parents. CL largely deals with the criminal underground along with all the problems that comes with it. Did they have face piercings during the Victorian era? Not working with criminals, except for Lau for an informant, but working to stop drug dealers during the recent banning of opium after the opium epidemic. Funny enough, some of the extreme feats that Sebastian can do, like running at super speed, doesn't quite show his demonic abilities when that sort of thing is also present in regular comedy anime. So certain scenes where it's supposed to show him being supernatural doesn't quite work in this medium. However, the scene that actually delivers on his supernatural abilities is when he manages to defy death after clearly being killed.
All right, how much longer are you planning to play dead?
Guns today are so much more efficient than they used to be.
You know, I realize now CL is a warlock. Like, he made a pact with a demon for supernatural powers in exchange for his soul, of course. You can transfer CL into D&D with next to no trouble. The greatest strength of this show is the slow unfolding of details. The allusions to what we would infer always come before the proper explanation or event. Just like how they'll show Sebastian's powers and how they explain how CL's parents died in a fire and they had to reconstruct the manor. Because parents aren't allowed in fiction. Also, given that this is a dark fantasy, Grell casually tries to commit suicide, casually to make up for his mistakes. So if that's triggering you, I don't think it'll get any better. I know it doesn't get better. Though I think this stems more from the idea of seppuku, but regardless, usually that's an actual ritual requiring a specific way you use the sword, beridding the sword and using literally any other method makes it to where it's not the same. But this is a story of Japanese origin, so the way they think of suicide in general is going to be a little bit different. For people who are interested in historical fantasies, this anime makes several nods to Victorian-era London. They touched on the opium epidemic, Jack the Ripper, how people started to view children as pure, the pollution of the River Thames. It'll spring up on you here and there.
So Alice's beau gave her the most extraordinary for a birthday. It was white and so...
Just don't forget, this is largely a comedy first and foremost. Acer Saren Urgakuga said, historical applications to the manga, such as figures, references, outfits, etc. There's so much you can cover the heck out of this easily through the manga translation notes and general manga/anime. Now, Let's talk about cross-dressing. This was prior to the big shift and public knowledge of transgender issues and the modern interpretation of gender. Cross-dressing was a very cheap and easy method to get a quick and easy laugh, and frankly, I think it's still effective. Having someone put into a greatly uncomfortable situation will always be comedic. If he wasn't uncomfortable, then it wouldn't be funny. The comedy doesn't come from the cross-dressing, it comes from how it makes the person feel. So I don't think cross-dressing for the sake of comedy is harmful, not really. Earlier we had Grell cross-dressing and he wasn't uncomfortable. The comedy from that comes from the shock of finding out he is comfortable with his own gender, which isn't what we expected. Also, Ciel looks adorable and I love this dress, so I feel like it gets a pass. Plus, this setup of a cisgender person being uncomfortable in the opposite gender's clothes is an easy example of what dysphoria is for people who likely don't experience dysphoria, so there's a positive to it as well.
Is it because you're trying to avenge your parents' murders?
I want to find the people responsible for what happened, and I want to make them experience the same pain and humiliation that I suffered.
Ciel is like Bruce Wayne if Bruce Wayne were corrupted, overcome by an obsession that he refuses to let go, willing to go to any extreme in order to accomplish that task, and all fueled by the death of his parents. He says that he doesn't do it for revenge, and then he literally describes a revenge motivation. A revenge motivation is a very popular and satisfying one because it gives a very clear goal fueled by very strong emotion, and characters with a strong emotional push are always engaging. Anger is a motivator, and it's one of the strongest feelings a person can experience, making it easy to apply to any character. Anyway, turns out Jack the Ripper is Grell? Oh, geez, so everyone had the hots for Grell, just like they had the hots for Jeffrey Dahmer. I didn't realize history was repeating itself. I mean, this is technically a Grim Reaper, so it's not the same, but it's basically the same. The inclusion of Grell is absolutely necessary for this story. Without someone equal to Sebastian, the story would quickly become boring. Grell creates a proper struggle for the main characters. Without that struggle, we'd have the Superman problem where they fly in, save the day, and leave. Grell being a Reaper is the only one that can truly kill Sebastian. It's with the death of Ciel's aunt that we see her motivation of being Jack the Ripper, having her uterus removed and her unborn baby taken away from her, only for prostitutes coming to her for abortions drove her to extreme jealousy. Grell chose to hover around her because she was so apt at killing others, and since she was a woman, she was far less likely to be suspect. Her motivation ended up making sense, along with her disdain for Ciel. However, her character only serves to cement Grell's character. Even though they had a solid motivation for her, it's a shame that they threw her away. Actually, wait. Grell's gender is like a heavily debated topic in the community. Grell calls his calls themselves a lady. So I guess it's not really surprising that they were comfortable wearing a dress. That wasn't comedy, that was foreshadowing.
It's too much, Bessie. I would bear your children if only you'd let me. Please stop that.
Grell's focus on removing the uterus from women makes sense given that there's substantial evidence that Grell is a trans woman. Thus, Grell wants what she doesn't have. I even heard there's a confessional where Grell talks about wanting a sex change. I'll cover it more when I review the manga, but given what I've looked into, I'm going to refer to Grell with she/her pronouns for this video, even if the characters use he/him for Grell. @isfairytale said, I highly suggest doing some very thorough research on Grell's gender as well. I tried a few years ago and came away with I should just use they, them based on my research, but apparently recently the author has started using female pronouns. People get really heated about this.
As a reward, I shall kill you. I can tell you who killed the kid's parents!
Now you'd think they'd want to go after Grell, and you'd think Grell would eventually tell them who killed Ciel's parents. However, that literally never happens, and I don't understand why they included this in the show if this is basically just thrown away afterward. Then they adopt a demon dog. That can also turn into a human, that of which Agatha, some random maid who will be important later, gets freaky with. So that's probably something that's gonna come back later again.
Coming, sir?
Yes, in fact, I think he is. They really love slowly giving you more and more information. Like, you'll be randomly watching the show and next thing you know, there's a kid getting branded by a cult. Why? Well, you gotta keep watching to find out. Gotta keep you coming back somehow. Also, this is Lizzie, which is Ciel's cousin and betrothed, which I get being married to your own family members during this time was still practiced, but I can't help but feel like this was added because it's a historically accurate brother and sister romance that we see in a lot of anime. Lizzie's character starts off very innocent, where it's hard not to like her. The reason she's so annoying and obsesses over Ciel isn't because of some crappy passion of romance, but she just knows what he was like before his parents died, and all she wants is to make him happy again. Oh hey, that one freaky maid is back. I guess I'm not surprised, she's the main antagonist. Side note, the introduction of the Indian prince and his shockingly adept servant Agni really takes away a lot of the supposed power structure they had in place. Agni is human and can somehow go toe-to-toe with Sebastian. Prior, it was presumed only supernatural creatures could match Sebastian. If a human can match Sebastian, then it does more to undermine Sebastian's prowess rather than raise Agni's physique. I understand that his hand is blessed by a goddess, but they don't actually explain how that occurred. It's something completely unique to him. We don't technically know if it was literally blessed by a goddess. There's just isn't enough evidence, and the inclusion of them creates a dilemma. You may realize that the plot seems to jump around, and that's because there's a mystery that takes place for every 2 to 3 episodes, like tiny little arcs that eventually all coalesce into a greater story. Sometimes the events of one mystery will carry over into the bigger story, sometimes it doesn't. Halfway through the season, Sebastian seduces and then does a nun, like literally. I can't show anything beyond this point, but part of me is conflicted whether this is uncharacteristic of Sebastian or it is characteristic of him because he's intentionally trying to upset Grell. Either way, Sebastian is hot and I'm not complaining. Also, Freaky Maid Woman is an angel. Oh my goodness, now this is getting weird. Remember how they introduced the Grim Reaper's ability to see a person's life flash before their eyes? Well, that was intentional in order for us and Ciel to see the true events of when his house burned down. Apparently, the person behind it was this angel, Angela, great name. And not only that, she's more demented than we thought, grafting his parents together.
This is the Grim Reaper library!
I'm not the only one who harmed your parents, but you know that.
The juxtaposition between the angel being a disgusting and horrifying creature and a demon being a proper and a well-mannered creature isn't the first we've seen this sort of dichotomy. Like in PSG, we saw that same juxtaposition, but it does make it more effective. The divine beings that are usually supposed to be comforting become the most horrifying thing you can encounter, throwing the expectations of the viewers into a loop. Angela is obsessed with cleansing, making things pure, and she is focused on cleansing Ciel and his past. And Sebastian hates things that are pure, him being a demon and all. I guess corruption in all its forms is aligned with Sebastian's character, huh? Thankfully, Ciel doesn't fall for the trap and manages to fight it. Ciel refuses to give up his grudge. Hatred became a part of who he is.
Why don't you just let it go?
I can't! If I let go of hatred, then the person I've been since that day disappears with it.
Here's the horrifying thing. The Grim Reapers can just put a pause on someone's death and rewrite the events of reality. Like saying Sebastian randomly appears because it was written. And if that's the case, wouldn't you just say that Angela suffocates and dies? I mean, I guess angels are above Reapers, so they can't be swayed by their power, maybe. But then what's the power structure between the demons and the Reapers? And if this power exists, why wouldn't that be actively stolen and misused? I mean, heck, Grell exists. I'd be shocked if she didn't think to use it for whatever she wanted. They've added a tool that's too powerful and breaks reason. And by reason, I mean reasonably. We'd use that book all the time for everything. But now we have to come up with a reason why they wouldn't. It's lazy and bad, and they just completely forget about it after this episode. Apparently, every white-haired person is a villain. The Queen's butler, and I mean the Queen, framed Ciel for drug trafficking. Now he's being arrested. They even put a bunch of drugs in the Phantom Hive warehouse. Frankly, I wouldn't be shocked if Angela and the Queen's butler is the same person, and she's just able to change her voice. And yes, I'm using this clip because obvious reasons.
But the idiot tried to blackmail Lau and got himself killed by Lau's little tigress for his trouble.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that gun is anachronistic. They didn't have semi-automatic pistols during the 19th century. They had revolvers. Or at least they didn't have semi-automatic pistols that looked like this when they were first invented. So we spend some time getting rid of side characters that weren't really adding to the story, and also CL learns the Queen is maybe sorta probably trying to start a war, which I'm sure is very shocking for CL, not shocking for literally anyone that knows the British. Then we commit some time fleshing out what we thought was their useless staff, when turns out each of them were specifically chosen by Sebastian because they're all incredible in their own unique way. They're just really bad at being staff. Flipping our assumptions on our head and also showing us how thorough Sebastian really is. I love tiny twists like this. Not everything needs to be an earth-shattering twist.
We are stained. We are unclean. And so I have cleansed the house that has seen fit to sully our great country, the house of Phantom Hive.
Ah, the Queen is the big bad guy. Yeah, that was a little predictable. Apparently grafting humans together is a pastime for these people. The Queen was so grief-stricken at her husband's passing that Ash, her butler, grafted their bodies together, which somehow made her younger? I guess, they don't really explain that part.
Also, kill the Queen.
Throughout the show, CL seems to show hints of weakness. What was once a boy who was willing to tear through anyone in order to accomplish his task is now hesitating. And this is clearly starting to upset Sebastian, losing their chance to finally end the person who no doubt was responsible for the death of his parents.
Did it mean nothing? The vow you swore to me then?
Sebastian straight up ditches CL. Like, I guess you could argue that CL broke the contract and CL is pretty useless without him, as we all expected. He's still a kid, or maybe this is Sebastian teaching him a tough lesson since CL's eye is still marked. CL is maybe thinking that he can have a happy future? You know who else has white hair? The dog they adopted. Now the manor is on fire. Again. Wait, the Undertaker has white hair. Is he a villain? I know he's a Reaper. But, you know,
Before much longer, you'll die.
You know, they don't really go into much detail about why the Queen wants to usher in a new era for London. The Angels just have this obsession with making things clean and pure, and other than that, there isn't much other motivation. And if you try to factor in some sort of biblical motivation, it also doesn't really make all that much sense. Other than that, some cult-like ideal, the Angels make a very uninteresting villain, and then CL gives away his family ring to get a boat to London.
All things are two sides of the same coin, but when they are put through the purifying flames, they become one. They return to the essential existence beloved of the Father.
I still don't buy it, if I'm gonna be honest.
Is there something else you want?
I called it! I knew it! CL stumbles upon the Queen, rotted away and dead. Then he gets shot, and that kind of wakes him up. Or at least his hate-fueled self, and so his connection to Sebastian is reconnected. So Sebastian comes to do what Sebastian does best. CL's self-doubt felt like a necessary inclusion. CL needed to have himself challenged in order for him and us to truly believe in what he actually wants. I think the biggest gripe is that the antagonist doesn't have a direct opposition to CL and Sebastian. They just sort of found out there's angels doing bad things and they're obligated to stop it because they were caught in the middle of it, and they don't even revisit CL's parents and why they were killed and grafted. Like, why did the angel do this? Sebastian starts losing so bad he has to transform into his quote-unquote true form, just like the proper edginess that of which we love. Black Butler is very much middle school writing. The antagonist is kind of shallow, and details that would really make the story more make sense are not there, but it's replaced instead with cool visuals and hyper-obsessed characters that don't really have depth. And after all that, the reward is CL dying, completing his contract and offering his soul to Sebastian as promised, or at least that's what you'd think, because we have more seasons that need to be reviewed. Season ends with CL getting his soul eaten, but not really, but I'll get to that in a second. The whole thing felt very unsatisfying. So, the Queen was being influenced by the crazy fallen angel that's obsessed with purification. That's basically it. That led the Queen to kill CL's parents because they were unpure, because they were working with the criminal underground. It's just, I don't want to say it's random. It feels a little random. I just want to, there is no depth to the motivation behind either of the villains. The premise is cool, but it lacks substance. I am really hoping this is a problem with just the anime and not the manga, or maybe with the localization, I don't know. I think the appeal of the show is that it seemed dark and edgy to a bunch of kids, and that's what got them hooked. But in retrospect, it's not very well done. I mean, hopefully we'll get to learn more as there is more of the show left to cover in more seasons, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. New season, new kid, new demon pact, but with a spider motif. How fun! I hear conflicting opinions of season 2. Some people love it, some people don't. Holy crap, this kid is freaking evil. I already hate this guy. At Wolfkill said, unpopular opinion, I'd like the second season for what it was, as long as you treat it like this sort of non-canon OVA or something. It isn't bad, it's like an alternate ending since it didn't take place in the manga. So Aloise, the new kid, was kidnapped as a kid, mysteriously disappeared, and judging from the intro that I can't show, he was stolen by a pervert. You can figure out the rest. And so he made a demon pact and reappeared similar to CL. Very much, you can copy my homework, just change it so the teacher doesn't get suspicious. Claude, the unemotional new butler, gets to meet a stranger who sounds and looks very similar to Sebastian. Well, thank goodness we didn't just throw him away, especially since Claude is so stoic, it's hard to inject any character into him.
This mansion's so dull.
I've been told something interesting lies under this mansion.
So Sebastian steals some special magic tea that can sink someone into the pits of darkness or something that I don't even think really was a major plot point in this whole story.
CL Phantom Hive?
What? How? Is this before his soul was eaten? Don't worry, we're not focusing on Aloise. The main character is still CL and Sebastian. Lao is alive? So either people can come back from the dead, or this is definitely in between season 1, and it's definitely not in between season 1. How is Lao here? You know when animation studios make anime that isn't part of the manga and just start making up their own stories? I'm gonna start calling this fan fiction. It's just fan fiction with a big budget and an official license, because to be frank, it's just weird otherwise.
That's a valuable scholarly acquisition.
It's a mummy.
I sure hope it's not on today's menu.
It's really true? No. CL has truly lost his memory?
Oh, finally. Okay. Wait, what about Lao? For some reason, Sebastian didn't eat CL's soul. That's looking too close to a kiss, my dude. That is a child. Apparently, some way, somehow, CL doesn't have a soul. He's empty, as Sebastian puts it. Claude stole his soul, and Sebastian went to Aloise's manor in order to steal it back. Now he's just trying to piece CL back together so that he can finally get his meal. CL needs the pain of his memories in order for his soul to be properly corrupted and delicious. Claude and Bassie get smart and make a pact where Aloise will become the target of CL's revenge, and once CL gets his revenge, then they fight for his soul. Both of them need CL fully intact. I don't really know why Claude needs CL, but apparently he does, for reasons. I think he just wants his CL's soul also for tasty reasons. And Sebastian forges documents to frame Aloise for murdering CL's parents. When the heck would Claude have stolen CL's soul? I know they're just making stuff up so they can milk out a second season, but still, how? That makes no sense to me. That just feels so slapped together. In season 1, there were plenty of points where the action was so over the top and ridiculous that I was rolling my eyes in a good way. They really wanted to crank that up to 11 in this season, and once you've already gone to ridiculous, it's hard to be even more ridiculous without it just being so silly you can't stomach it. The balance between the comedy and mystery is important in Black Butler, because without its unique comedy, well, then it's just not Black Butler. So, do I judge it harshly? Yes. But I would be more upset if this weren't included, so I can't really complain. I can see why so many people are upset at season 2. It kind of pulls the rug out from under us. All the setup that was developed in season 1 is pretty much thrown away. The big payoff of CL's soul being eaten is robbed from us. Like your mom promising to get McDonald's after you go shopping, but then there's something she forgot to grab and had to go back. Then she ran into a friend, so she started a long and arduous chat. we're just sitting and waiting for what was just within reach, but now we just gotta wait even longer for no good reason. I get we're trying to show how awful Eloise is, but the repeated abuse of this specific maid is in bad taste. I mean, come on. So to elaborate, what I can understand, because a lot of people get confused with season 2, apparently Sebastian, prior to meeting CL, wiped out Aloise's village and took out his brother in the process while pursuing a previous contract, or at least that's what Claude told Aloise. Once he finds out what Sebastian allegedly did, he decides to go after CL in order to steal away Sebastian's meal. If he can take away CL, then Aloise will get revenge on Sebastian. What I can say is that Aloise is more interesting of a villain than Angela in season 1, or at least he has a more tangible motivation, even if it takes them some time to really deliver on what the heck his motivation is. If I'm really trying to compliment season 2, Aloise and his past and how awful his life was makes his motivation make sense. A kid that's never been shown love, begging at the feet of a demon for affection, and then Claude kills him. Oh, Aloise's soul became unappetizing. He wasn't being corrupted properly, so now Claude is just a wild card now. CL gets arrested because Claude had a plan to use the maid to give a false identification. Yup, that's Aloise, all right, can't mistake him. Then they torture him and basically brainwashed him into believing that he's actually Aloise. Claude wants CL's soul, jealous of how tasteful it is and how Aloise was so useless.
Kill my parents! It was you! Just admit it!
I didn't predict you mixing their memories. Your intention, of course, was to merge the two souls as one.
How? Memories and souls are the same thing now? Or you can transfer memories, Kingdom Hearts style? How does this make sense? Remember how Aloise's village was presumably burned down by Sebastian? Well, Sebastian goes to that village and talks to the last living local. Apparently, it was Aloise's little brother that made a contract with a demon to have the village and everyone in it destroyed, and that's why his brother died. You know, because of the soul-eating part. They don't explicitly say it yet, but like, you can tell the big twist is that Hannah, the maid that gets regularly beaten, is the demon that destroyed the village, and they somehow blame Sebastian. And she also has CL's right eye in her mouth. Hannah not only made a deal with Aloise's little brother, but also sort of became infatuated with him, and so after she destroyed the village for him and went to eat his soul, she was just like, dang, this is a kid. What is this? Emotions? So she now wants Aloise's soul so that both the brothers can be together inside the maid. Now we're getting to stupid levels of ridiculous. Like the first couple twists I could take. Now it's just breaking what we thought was true with demons. More importantly, we don't know Hannah as a character, so we don't have any connection to her. This twist is just adding another twist for the sake of a twist.
I know how I would like our contract to be concluded, is that neither of them will gain CL's soul.
You wish for a murder, then?
That's not what I had in mind.
Hannah gets a contract with Aloise, and because they're somehow in the same body, that also includes a contract with CL. They battle, but like Sebastian and Claude, it doesn't really make much sense other than to give Sebastian a chance to save CL. Why are they fighting? Claude is dead. Aloise's soul, I don't know, passes on? I don't think it's eaten. I also don't get why he just leaves. Also, in the most stupid, unthought twist they had to add, apparently, you can add in a contract to make someone else a demon. How did they do that? I don't know, but Aloise said, hey, make CL a demon. That way Sebastian can't have his soul. And now he just is a demon. So do they explain how he turned into one? No, he just is. It feels like they were really reaching to create a scenario where Sebastian and CL's relationship would never end so they can keep making seasons. Problem is, that also makes it confusing and uninteresting. No wonder the fans hate this season. It's all over the place. They're so desperate for shocking twists, they decided to play it safe and add as many twists as they possibly could. They made it so difficult to follow that it's like trying to understand calculus. It's slow, monotonous, and even when you understand it, it's not all that satisfying given how much work it took. Getting rid of CL, putting up his soul for revenge, takes away a massive facet of his character. He's not CL anymore. CL didn't care about living after his revenge. And how is Lau still alive? I cannot say that I'm shocked the fans ignore season 2. I don't care, I'm putting on my sunglasses. It keeps the hair out of my eyes and I like it a lot better. There's clearly a lot of thought put into season 2, but for all the wrong reasons. They ended up destroying everything that made Sebastian and CL interesting. It's clear their motive was to create a scenario where they can continue extracting the popularity of Sebastian and CL. They realized, oh crud, we wrapped everything up. Oh no, it's popular. We need to bring it back somehow. Like, you can see right through it. Now I can see why there's so much disdain for anime-only fans of Black Butler. I don't even know what happens in the manga, but if you like season 2, I feel like you're just blindly consuming TV without any thought put into it. Like, there's just no critical thinking. And I don't want, that's really mean to people who like season 2, but like, I have such a fire inside of me to read the manga now. I'm gonna rip the anime a new one, I swear. Okay, so here's the real problem with season 2. They explained all of the why. They did not explain any of the how. The motivations of everyone was aligned. Great job. Still better motivations and better antagonists than in season 1. I still hold firm to that. But in terms of the how did CL get turned into a demon? Demons just have that power to turn demons into other demons? Are they vampires now? How is there just a random maze that can just appear and that is tied to CL's and Aloise's emotions and just reflects that? That just came out of nowhere. How do memories and souls mix into one via memories? Magic systems need rules, okay? Humans love rules. Without rules, there is no game. Okay, so we're now going to focus on the OVAs. These OVAs are apparently canon with the manga. And if you really need to think of them chronologically, they take place in the middle of season 1 before CL's soul was eaten. So just ignore season 2. Season 2 never happened. Don't worry, baby, it can't hurt you anymore. Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, OVA stands for Original Video Animation. It's basically the equivalent to direct-to-TV movies. Although Book of Circus is called an OVA, but it's literally just season 3. The OVAs are straight up just movies. Book of Circus is a couple arcs ahead. If you look at the list of all the arcs from the manga, the OVAs are pretty much smack in the center of the dab. They kind of do a soft reboot where it's not really a reboot, but it also basically is. We're going back to before CL enacted his revenge and reintroducing the characters, just about what we expected. CL gets invited to a circus by some strange men in white, the enemies of the men in black. Also, the queen is just the queen, regular old lady, and apparently children go missing whenever Noah's Ark Circus performs, so CL the guard dog has to go investigate. Every circus performer, or most of them, seem to all have some sort of prosthesis, all crafted by this one doctor. I feel like the writer likes to make up scenarios just to put CL into new outfits. I'd love to both have a figure of CL in these different outfits, as well as have those outfits, mostly have those outfits. Anyway, as you can see, best way to investigate is to join the circus. Apparently the circus folk can hypnotize children into seeing a fantasy land, making them voluntarily get into the white van with candy inside. Then the children don't seem to be kept at the circus, making them even harder to find. This setup makes far more sense, not only for the storytelling, but also the pacing. Instead of committing 2 or 3 episodes blazing through mystery after mystery, we commit a season of a full 10 episodes to properly explore every aspect of the story, covering an entire arc in a season. Now this is pretty much abandoned after Book of Circus, as the next OVAs are your typical 1 or 2 episodes. Even if they're long episodes, it still won't be able to match the proper pacing of this season. Snooping around, CL finds a letter that has a profile of him. Turns out the circus collects children and brings them to their adoptive father, the same person that helped invent the prosthetics they all use, and this man seems to be obsessed with adding CL to his quote-unquote collection. This show has some weird obsession with using kids for shock value. This is the 3rd time they've abused kids for the sake of showcasing how awful the villain is. Heck, arguably 4th time. Don't get it wrong, it's effective, but falling back on it over and over again is in bad taste. During Book of Circus, it actually dabbles into CL's trauma, like how he was kidnapped and tortured just prior to him making his demonic pact. And though this isn't The place where it happened, it is a one-to-one recreation of it. Father became obsessed with the Phantom Hive family, thinking them perfectly beautiful, and wanting to reach that same level of beauty, so he started doing plastic surgery in order to reach his false ideal. He wanted to be special, porcelain skin, thus his obsession with children. He sees them as icons of perfect beauty. This is such an extreme form of body dysmorphia. We see this sort of thing with people in modern day, and is the sort of thing that the beauty industry preys upon. But this is exaggerated to such an extreme, it's disgusting. This guy was even part of the weird cult that stole CL, but he wasn't able to attend his sacrifice? Whatever it was? CL does the understandable yet stupid thing of shooting him out of anger. Though he would definitely have information about that weird cult, having them tease information about CL's past only to toss it aside is frustrating. I mean, now, in retrospect, it's fine. We know there's more seasons, but with anime, we don't know when or if they'll get more seasons, and I appreciate them adhering to the manga, but with how flawed the previous seasons were, they no doubt lost so much faith that when this released, I can imagine the viewers were scared that they were being teased with no payoff or promise thereof. Also, the circus performers get murked by the servants. You may be thinking that the old man was a pervert, but turns out that's not quite right. Turns out the children were being harvested for their bones to make the perfect material for lightweight prosthetics. Now, I'm not an expert in prosthetics, but my goodness, how are their bones better than adults? Book of Circus thus far is the most cohesive story, but it's hard to say it's as engaging. It felt like the cruelty wasn't so much to explore the genre of dark fantasy, but for shock value. And the motivation were nebulous for the Baron, big bad guy. I wish the circus performers were more of a bad guy. Like, it feels like we just missed the mark with the antagonists. Especially since there were aspects of the story that felt very superfluous and didn't really make an addition to the story whatsoever. I assume they introduced the Grim Reapers in this season just because they wanted to cover the Reapers, as this was a soft reboot of sorts. The point, or the theme, is also a bit flat. Like, I thought they were going to be going for the gap between the poor and the rich, but that wasn't really it. Or maybe it's how far people will go to protect what they care for, but that's barely part of it either. There's several themes they touched, but never really kept throughout the season. I'm just baffled. The only thing I can really say is that the theme is that humans suck. Book of Murder is 2 one-hour OVA specials, basically 2 mini-movies, connecting with the end of Book of Circus, where they showed off these 2 white-haired fellows in passing, and now we're seeing them attack the Phantom Hive Manor. And they're surprisingly good at what they do, and my bad is that they're angels, because, you know, white hair.
My name's Charles Gray. It's a pleasure and all that.
And my name is Charles Phipps. A pleasure.
So the Queen is pretty upset at how CL botched the circus case. You know, with the whole killing the primary suspect, they kind of needed him alive. So the Queen says you're getting a second chance, but don't screw it up or you donezo. So CL starts tossing out letters to a bunch of blokes with CGI horses. We have the classic murder at a party trope because we just can't escape it. But I'm not complaining. These sorts of things are reused often because they're almost always a great setup. Sometimes cliches and tropes are welcome if they're done well. So they guess that the killer used a needle and thread to lock the door from outside in order to create confusion for this guy that was killed. Just like how this one dude is so good with a needle and thread that he expertly fixed this guy's clothes. So either this is obvious or it's a red herring.
The killer probably isn't trying to copy a novel. It's just the only explanation that seems realistic in this case.
So we're not even going to go with the whole, the killer is still in the room possibility. We aren't guaranteed that the killer is one of the guests. Then Sebastian is killed, or he's pretending to be dead to catch the killer. The appeal of this is how Sebastian and CL are working together to trap the killer. Surprise, there was another person that wasn't one of the guests.
Evidently, he arranged for the owl to carry this note to Jeremy because he had somehow predicted his own death.
This dude acts as a Sherlock Holmes and claims to solve the case, the murderer being a snake, a black mamba, which doesn't make sense given that there was a poker inside Sebastian, so it's obvious the snake is just a tool. Gosh! Sure looks like the murderer is the one guy in the diamond business that wants to get rid of CL so he can keep his business. Every kiss begins with kill. Surprise! Jeremy, or whoever he was Sebastian the whole time. They classically go through each event and go through what they were thinking with each event, and not surprisingly, the Queen's Guard was the real murderer for like part of it. The entire story is fine. A mystery like this can be difficult to swallow when it's an anime and magic is involved. It takes away a lot of the intrigue of trying to solve it for ourselves. There isn't much of an aha moment that is so titular to mystery stories. However, this was far more engaging than Book of Circus. The layered, thought-out story was far more cohesive and more watertight. As far as entertainment value, it's a cut above the previous incarnations, so Book of Murder definitely shines above the rest. Frankly, it stops being an interesting mystery and becomes incredibly comical, seeing the extreme lengths that Sebastian had to go through in order to pretend to be dead, making the entire experience more entertaining, as well as making it feel like a proper Black Butler arc. This entire murder case was constructed by the Queen, the hope of covering up murders in order to make political moves, and CL was put in charge of making these murders swept under the rug, thus making sure he pinned the blame on the diamond cutter. He was already dealing illegal goods, so it's not a big deal to frame him for a couple more murders and send him to jail. After the whole explanation, you really feel like this is a great mystery that was made specifically for this world, and not just another mystery that has a demon in it for comedy. Book of Murder is one of my favorite arcs thus far. Book of Atlantic is a single hour and something long movie. It really feels like after losing favor with the fans with diverting from the manga, then slowly gaining favor with the fans by adhering to the manga, they were in an awkward state where they're constantly trying to make up for what they did. They recognize the value Black Butler has, specifically as a company, that they can use it for profit, and they decided they were going to do what they have to in order to get Black Butler to the status that it used to have. But they can't, overextend themselves with fully produced seasons, so it's safer to do OVAs with some higher quality animation for short bursts. Anyway, this arc is focused on Karnstein doing human trafficking overseas, so CL has to investigate it, and also apparently they're also raising the dead. Okay, quick aside, I literally just finished reading Carmilla right before reviewing this OVA. I mean, they referenced Carmilla in the Book of Murder, and I just skipped over it because I didn't think it was actually important. So hearing the Karnstein business, and somehow there's undead, I get the feeling I know where this might be going. However, I understand that 99% of the people who haven't read Carmilla. So I'm going to review it as if I haven't read it, or from the perspective of someone who hasn't read it. And who knows, I could be entirely off base and I could just be reading way too much into this because of a single reference in the previous OVA.
Their goal is to achieve mankind's perfect salvation through medicine.
I was afraid of CL being a Shota, and thus far, they never really went that direction. But sometimes, just, ew. This guy is just gross and weird, and that's his character, but Big Machine make Frankenstein girl come back to life. Oh, I haven't read Frankenstein. Maybe it's a reference to that also? I don't know. I feel like this is some miracle scam that'll boil over in a while. Oh no. Okay, yeah, I was pretty much on the money, but this looks like zombies. Maybe souls are ending up in the wrong bodies? I always liked that. Like, humans can only interact with the physical world, but are still succumbed to the whims of the spiritual world, like ghosts are putting us in our place. Surprise! Lizzie is here too. Honestly, good. They really just swept her under the rug. I feel like she has a solid foundation for what could be a good character. Also, Snake is here. He was from the circus and CL recruited him. He wasn't part of the kidnapping, so he's cool. Apparently, there's a collection of dead people. I like how they're really touching base with the scenes that feel like a horror movie. I feel like Black Butler can do more than just your generic blood and gore. There needs to be more dread. It's really important to darker stories. We love to see research done. The Atlantic hit some breakers. Well, the rocks were supposed to be underwater, but this works better for a movie, so I won't complain. Also, Grell is there for some reason. Okay, another tangent, I'm sorry. Why do you guys like Grell so much? I mean, sure, Grell is way more interesting in the manga, but they do nothing with her in the anime after the Jack the Ripper case. Why would they create a pretty interesting anti-hero and then just do nothing with them. Okay, they're referencing the Titanic, but they couldn't guarantee all of them dying, so they used the Atlantic instead. I'm not sure how to feel about this. The best thing they've been doing with Ciel is touching base with his trauma. How he goes to extremes and hurts people around him, but it's specifically to help and rescue them. Like where Lizzie and him need to take off clothes because the water will make it hard to move. And even though it's not fun watching him do this to her, this is the correct course of action.
Was that a horse and carriage?
Oh goodness! Is Leonardo and Kate still in there? Lizzie immediately becomes amazing. And this was a good switcheroo. She wanted to maintain the appearance of the adorable little bride-to-be, and when we thought she was going to die, turns out she's just trying to maintain the illusion of being helpless because this sort of action is unladylike, so it makes sense why she'd want to hide this side of her. She was pressured to maintain the gender stereotypes of the era. I love it. And we get a flashback to explain her prowess, as is expected. Bravo, bravo.
Strong women are frightening, aren't they? I'm glad you're the girl I'll be marrying.
Dang it, Lizzie is just so sweet and honest. I like her so much. And we get to see what the Undertaker can do? We're finally expanding the cast like I've been Oh my goodness. Undertaker, don't look at me like that. Apparently, the Doctor worked with the Undertaker to make the undead zombie machine, but why would the Undertaker help him? He's a Reaper or an ex-Reaper. Why would he want to reanimate them? Their explanation was just that the Undertaker got curious of what would happen. Like, he wanted to find out what happens to their records if there were more afterward, and I guess I would be too if I was in his shoes, but it's not very satisfying. Like, there's no benefit for him from this. It is a cool in-universe explanation for zombies in this world, but it comes with the problem of making the Undertaker kind of weird now.
They consume the living, always intent on finding a soul. The perfect military animals, aren't they?
Oh, okay, that makes sense. But do Reapers even care about money? There still isn't a gain for the Undertaker. This is when the story kind of starts to fall apart. Ciel and Sebastian need to keep the Undertaker alive because they have a responsibility to the Queen to bring the primary suspect into custody. Problem is that it's an ex-Grim Reaper. So, does the Queen know about all this magic and stuff or not? Book of Atlantic is so incredibly action-packed that it feels long overdue. The actions in Black Butler is usually tied to comedy. Here, it's just flat-out action, and this is frankly more of what I expected from this series. Oh no, oh gosh, no, Sebastian was hit by a death scythe, but like, that would actually kill him. Yep, there's his record. Yep, he's dying. I know there's more arcs after this, but you know, how are they supposed to reverse this? You know what's never properly explained, even when it's following the manga? The rules of demons. How much power does Sebastian have? He was able to reconstruct the manor in an afternoon. He can have food appear out of nowhere. Can't these skills be more transferable in other situations? I know Ciel told him to prepare and make things using human methods, so he has a soft restriction on him, making it make sense in the present, but if he didn't have these restrictions, if all the demons don't have these restrictions, what is the full extent of their powers? It's driving me crazy. Is there a good reason that Sebastian stays alive? Not really. The Undertaker saw his cinematic record. I thought that meant he was dead for good. But nope, apparently that just wasn't enough to kill him. That sounds like a cop-out. Oh, and then the ship starts sinking, so he can't finish the job. I appreciate seeing Sebastian's history with Ciel, but you guys just washed over the important detail of Sebastian somehow not dying. You kind of broke your own rule. Ciel takes some weird treasure from the Undertaker, and then the Undertaker splits the ship in half and gets away because of course he does. Book of Atlantic is probably the best entry point for new fans. If you're trying to get your friends into the show, but they're wishy-washy, this is a great method to catch them up to speed and give them a good taste of what makes Black Butler interesting. Though this OVA does the dark fantasy a little better for my taste, I feel like Atlantic is the anime really settling into place. There felt like a good balance of all things. It's nice seeing how far it fell and how it's slowly working its way back up, reviving the good name of Black Butler. Okay, so I accidentally forgot about the OVAs of season 2, which is like a thing. They're just fun little short episodes. They're not really like a thing. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna do a quick fire review of them to get them out of the way, just so that I can say I reviewed all of them and I can call myself an official Black Butler fan. They did a Wonderland ripoff. Great excuse to put CL in another dress, but it's just fine if, and it's about what you'd expect. I would have been surprised if they didn't make some sort of allusion to Alice's adventure in Wonderland.
Perhaps drink me, Will.
I take back what I said. This special is perfect in every way. Lizzie made a friend, and it's all a self-insert POV where you can pretend that you're being welcomed to the Phantom Hive Manor. Honestly, great idea. I love it. It only makes me wish there was a Black Butler Ultimate game. Am I going to replay this over and over again? Maybe. I'll never tell. And then it turns and twists into finding out that you're a hired assassin to kill Sebastian and take CL as a hostage. So honestly, I still love the idea. And you get to dance with Sebastian. Infinitely better than Wonderland. And this is coming from a Wonderland fan. They made an animation about how popular and awesome and amazing Black Butler was, and so they animated the entire world being absolutely enamored by the show.
Black Butler.
Ooh, yikes. They even pretend that CL and Sebastian are bigwig actors in the real world that talked to the producers and decided to reprise the role for season 2. It's quirky, if weird, and I thought the self-insert POV was weird, but this is just, if I saw this as a kid with my weak understanding of reality, this would confuse the heck out of me. For the comedy aspect, it's a great idea. It quickly becomes incredibly cringe when they commit a lot of time talking about how awesome Black Butler is and how ingenious the second season was written and how it shows true artistry. This entire OVA is them wanking themselves off to a mirror. So I could recommend watching it if only to mock how bad it is. It's so bad, it's good. Will the Reaper is a character that really does a whole lot of nothing but complaining and getting in Sebastian's way. It's hard for me to really like him. I understand he's the one keeping Grell in line, which makes his character somewhat necessary, but I just wish they'd do more with him. This OVA focuses on him and Grell as they train new Grim Reapers, which is nice how they finally decided to expand on the magical aspect of this world. Frankly, if you're a fan of Grell, then it's worth watching. It focuses on the first mission with Grell and Will, and it's cute seeing how the world operates from their eyes. This is a perspective that could be used in the main series. Black Butler could seriously improve with some B-plots. This OVA is my favorite, if I'm gonna be honest. A good story about two foils fighting on whether or not to spare a soul, learning to work together in order to accomplish a common goal. It's getting to see an aspect of the world that we otherwise wouldn't. A look into the everyday life of Aloise. It's just a weird slice of life about a psychotic child. Go ahead and skip it. It's not really worth watching. Black Butler has a great premise. After seeing how the studio handled the anime, it's hard to say that I am not disappointed. But since they started to make the OVAs canon with the manga and how it's slowly improving over time, I am developing hope for the future of Black Butler. Black Butler is one of those animes that people think disappeared, but in actuality never really left. It just likes to take its time. It's sweet, sweet time. I am concerned about the waning popularity of Black Butler, however, but I think I can say it looks like it's going to get better from here on out. The studio is listening to the demands of the fan base and they are properly delivering, and as I am making this video, another season is currently in the works. So if you have a friend that's you're hoping to get them into Black Butler, or they have an interest in getting into Black Butler, share this video with them so they can get a quick, rundown of everything that's happened thus far. Next, I will be comparing the manga to the anime, so please do subscribe. Special thanks to that one person who actually bought the feet pics on my Patreon. You're a real one. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think about Black Butler in the comments below. Are you still a fan? Are you a fan and then you fell off of the series? Are you a fan that's trying to come back? Why? And don't forget to stay beautiful and keep playing.